Welcome to another episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. I'm your host, Laura Navaquin, and today we have a special guest, Jessica Marie. Jessica is the founder and owner of Empower, where she partners with emerging businesses to achieve operational success and growth. With a wealth of knowledge and experience across various leadership roles in both startups and global companies, Jessica has mastered the art of driving impactful change. Her expertise in operational optimization, product strategy execution, and team building makes her an incredible resource for anyone looking to leverage technology to enhance business efficiency. Jessica, welcome to this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. I'm so excited to have you, and I have a number of questions to tap into your expertise. Welcome to
Awesome.
the
I'm happy
episode.
to.
Like I shared with you a few minutes ago, Jessica is the founder of Empower, where she partners with emerging businesses to achieve operational success and growth. So we have a number of questions, so let's dive in. Jessica, can you first share with us how you got started and what inspired you to start Empower?
Yeah, I'd say there are a lot of things. If someone were to look at my background and go far enough back, they probably would see that I started on Wall Street. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually a fixed income trader on the commercial mortgage backed securities desk at JP Morgan. So very
Mm-hmm.
different from where I am today. But I like to say that the sort of tipping point of my entrepreneurial journey happened when I decided to leave JP Morgan. I was really more interested in entrepreneurial pursuits and understanding how businesses were built from the ground up. And I knew I wouldn't be able to do that from the seat I was in there. So I kind of traded in my Bloomberg terminal and rolled up my sleeves and got into early stage technology startups, and kind of never looked back. I spent
Mm-hmm.
over a decade at early stage and high growth startups. And then I most recently was at a larger organization. But while there, really realized what made me tick was working with founders and business owners and helping translate their vision into execution. And I'm really operationally focused. So trying to find ways to drive efficiency and set them up for long-term growth is what I enjoy doing. And as I said, leaving JP Morgan, I always knew I wanted to start my own business at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and I was hearing the needs of the market from founders and business owners I knew. So it seemed like a good market opportunity that kind of blended both what I enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
what I was good at, and what the market needed.
Yeah, that's great. And so you mentioned helping those founders and other entrepreneurs as well. So, how would you say that you lace in your approach to helping businesses think about driving operational efficiency with technology specifically?
Yeah, sure. I'd say I really start with a deep understanding of the business itself, an understanding of the owner, the founder, the business, both their personal and business goals, and then really
Hmm.
getting to know the ins and outs of the current state of the organization. I really don't like to say that I come in and, just suggest wholesale changes without really getting an
Hmm.
understanding of where the business or the founder has been and where they're trying to go. And then I look for areas of pain or operational inefficiency or where I think things could be better or where the organization is telling me that things could be improved. And then I look for the right solutions to fit those problems. So I tend to really focus on let's not just talk about technology as the solution or starting with the solution, but like let's actually start with, well, what is the business problem or what are you trying to achieve with the business?
Hmm.
And then you find the solution that's kind of tailored to,
Yeah.
again, designing the business or that part of the operation for long-term success.
Yeah, and I know that you mentioned that you come in and it's, not just about imposing a certain change, but really getting to understand where the business is trying to go, but also pain points and whatever it may be. Is there certain criteria that you use to determine which areas of business can benefit most from these upgrades?
Yeah, and I'd say it probably differs from business to business, but
Mm-hmm.
when I come in, I'm really asking a business owner or founder to open the kimono, for lack of a better term. But I
Mm-hmm.
asked to speak to their team. I asked to look at the financials. I asked to look at systems and processes that they already
Yeah.
have in place. I asked to look at documentation. And throughout all of that discovery, there are lots of things that can be picked up on when you match the evidence with what I've been told are sort of the goals or aspirations or the next growth inflection point that that business owner is trying to achieve. So there are a lot of commonalities in, I'd say, kind of the early discovery work and the questions I ask and my approach to that. Um, but then the way that I kind of go from there, or the way that, I say this part of your business, needs help versus this, is really dependent on what I've heard are kind of the goals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I know, again, you mentioned you are helping entrepreneurs and other founders. Uh, is there any, so would you say that you're working with small business and mid-market businesses?
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit more. So I
Mm-hmm.
like to say that Empower's sweet spot is really working with either early stage technology startups similar to the ones that I worked in previously, or
Mm-hmm.
small businesses that are really coming up against some sort of inflection point. They're either
Mm-hmm.
trying to add new team members, or they're trying to expand to a new location, or they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
enter a new market. And something is really standing in their way of doing that in their current construct or with their current resources. So I'd say, like, just from a mindset perspective, like, that's generally where founders or business owners are coming to me with. And then more specifically, I tend to say people are most in need of the type of services I can provide when they've been in operation for a little while. So it's not necessarily, oh, I'm just starting out
Yeah.
and I want you to solve all these problems for me. Because when you're just starting out, you're just trying to get your first customers, you're just trying to get revenue, you're trying to get that initial product market fit. And quite frankly, you're still trying to figure out who you are and how you want to operate. So to
Mm-hmm.
have me come in then, I tend to find is a little bit early.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of just verticals, to be more specific, I said kind of the early stage technology startup, I'd say Series B or earlier. And then
Okay.
on the SMB front, it's really companies, professional services businesses, franchisees, creatives, and other sort of brick and mortar that are expanding. Two
Mm-hmm.
clients I'm working with today, just to give an example. One is a franchisee in the group fitness space, and one
Mm-hmm.
is a
Okay.
seasoned financial executive who's gone out on their own. So very
Okay.
different, but still solving holistic operational pain points for them. And then in terms of just general like size, I tend to say annual revenue of 5 million or below. I tend to see businesses that are larger than that have
Mm-hmm.
in-house operations
Oh,
lead.
yeah.
But that's not to say that someone who has a $10
Mm-hmm.
million business doesn't need the services. I just tend to find
Mm-hmm.
the sweet spot is in that 5 million and under range.
Yeah, that's great. And then also, are there any specific tools or platforms that you would recommend to business owners who are looking to enhance efficiency?
Yeah. And I'm going to say something that I say often, which
Mm-hmm.
is start with the business problem, not the solution. So while
Mm-hmm.
I have, technology tools that have been really impactful for me, either for Empower or at different businesses, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to translate into the best tool for um, someone who I'm working with or somebody who asked that question. And I get that question a lot. So again, when integrating a new tool or platform, I strongly encourage people to take a step back and really make sure they understand the pain point, the business problem, the workflow problem
Mm-hmm.
they are trying to solve for, and then do the investigation around what the right tool is for them. And to be honest,
Yeah.
technology is a great tool. It's a great accelerant. It can drive a lot of efficiency. And I think oftentimes, because I've come from that startup world, I have seen that in my face a lot more. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not intuitive to the vast majority of small business owners. And so I think it's always really important to also balance what can be achieved by technology with the human element that's always at play, and making sure that you are meeting people where they are, bringing them along the journey, and really delivering solutions that drive efficiency, but that will also be adopted, and giving them the tools to do that effectively.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Is not necessarily to go away and looking for what piece I can implement or what platform I can implement, but let's like take a step back and look at what the problem is and really understand that to ensure that the correct platform is being implemented. That yeah, I completely agree. And then also I know that technology is always evolving, but even more so at lightning speed as of recent years, even recent months, I would say. So my question to you is how do you stay updated on the latest technological trends or also determine what is worth integrating within operations?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. And I think it's a super poignant question today. I mean,
Hmm.
there's not a day that goes by that there aren't 10 new tools that have AI enablement kind of coming into
Hmm.
my inbox. And I think that can be overwhelming, but also very exciting. And there are a lot of different ways that I stay up to date on developments, whether it's with platforms that I've used in the past or platforms that I know are super popular for companies and just staying on top of product updates, et cetera, or it's following certain thought leaders in the space or newsletters. But at the end of the day, the thing that kind of gives me solace in the fact that there's so much going on is that there's not just one solution for every operational problem, or it doesn't just have to be done one way. And so there's a lot of like creativity and license that can be taken there. And again, I think the most important thing is you understand what you're trying to solve for. And then if you are resourceful and inquisitive enough, you will be able to look across the ecosystem and find solutions that solve for the particular capability. So even though, like, let's use a project management tool as an example, right? I've used Asana, I've used Monday.com, I've used Notion, I've used several of them. I haven't used all of them, but I think
Hmm.
being a hands on user of some of these things so that you know enough to be dangerous and you know enough to ask the right questions and you know enough to um, evaluate them when the time comes is really important. So I think there's like a combination of I
Yeah.
try to stay up to date on industry trends as much as I can. I'm not saying I'm the master of all, but I also just try to, spend some time playing around with stuff too and make sure that I know enough to understand the capabilities of some of these platforms because I think if you know the capabilities of one, you can start to kind of wade through the others.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And then, of course, being hands on because nothing really prepares you like being hands on and actually utilizing certain tools and things with anything, but especially with technology. You had one particular keyword there that rang a bell to me mentally, and that was AI. So I know a number of platforms are using AI or integrating some aspect of AI nowadays. And more of my own personal inquisitive question to you is what is your take on AI? I feel like personally, I have mixed feelings. Like in some aspects, I think it's great. In other ways, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know. Are you doing too much for us type of thing? And I'm just curious what your personal viewpoint of it is based on the tools that you use and how it's integrated within those tools.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a funny timing to be asking me the question because I actually, the past 2 weeks, I've used Empower's newsletter to write on this topic. So
Uh
I wrote one newsletter
huh.
article that was really just breaking down AI basics, like literally,
Yeah.
let's define it. Let's all have some common terminology
Hmm.
and also talk about some of the capabilities. And then a second post was about similar to what I was talking about before, how to think about whether AI could be right for your business or not. And there are a lot of considerations there. And I don't think everyone's 100% comfortable with it. And I don't think people are 100% comfortable with the use cases or the return on investment of implementing it to their business. But I
Hmm.
also think that a lot more businesses probably have elements of AI enablement, like weaved into one of their workflows and they don't really
Hmm.
know it. Like a lot
Yeah.
of customer support platforms and a lot of, platforms that people are used to using on a daily basis already
Hmm.
have AI embedded in them and you might not know. But my perspective on the topic and I'm not an AI guru or expert, but I am learning because I think it is very important. And whether or not you're going to implement it into your business today, I don't think it is something as business owners or founders you can completely ignore or think is going to go away, because it already is changing the way that people work. It's already driving efficiency. Pretty much every large company is talking about it in some way, shape, or form. So I don't think it's one of those things that you can kind of hide in the corner and not think about and just think it's going to go away. But I think there are approachable ways to start testing it out that aren't such high stakes. So what I mean by that is you can get a free version of ChatGPT or Claude or any of these other chat assistants and ask it to do some personal things for you. Build me an itinerary for my trip to France in 2027. Give it a lot of criteria so that you can test things like prompting or the like capabilities and limitations of when you use it for these sort of personal use cases. And I think when you do that and you're not giving the models like sensitive information without doing rigorous due diligence on how that data is being used, it kind of demystifies what AI is. And you can both see the power and you can also learn what some of the limitations are and what might concern you. So for instance, I use ChatGPT a lot. I use multiple platforms a lot. I never use it to actually write my content. I don't think it's very good at writing content. And also, I like to write my own content. But it can be very powerful for me as a small business owner and founder myself, as a second set of copy editing eyes, or as someone to make sure that my messaging aligns with the brand messaging guidelines that I've developed, or can give me tips on maybe how to make sentences more concise. So in those ways, it's allowed me as a new business owner to be more efficient, but there's certain things I won't use it for either, because I don't think that's the best use case for, my circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you also mentioned as well in the beginning that, I guess in a way that it would be overlooking if we said that AI is brand new altogether. And I was having this conversation with my husband relatively recently because he's in the tech industry, and we're having this conversation in regards to AI. And he's like, well, it's not new. It's just newer to it being so, I forgot what word he used, but being so accessible.
Accessible
So
to the consumer, right?
exactly.
It's been around for a long time. Even when I was working at startups years ago and we would use something like a Zendesk or an Intercom, there were ways that AI was working behind the scenes to help populate responses to frequently asked questions from like a help desk chat assistant. I think ChatGPT really just blew up the scene in terms of consumer accessibility and also just having much larger audiences, again, playing with the technology and using it. It's just literally anyone can go on, create a free account and start asking it questions and seeing what you can learn from it or seeing what it can do. So I think that's the big difference. And I'm sure people who have been technologists in this space for decades probably look at some of us and are like, this didn't happen yesterday.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that AI will just continue to evolve as it has, especially in the past year or so, as we see it being introduced to us on the consumer side and what it comes out with. So we'll see where all of that goes in, the near future as well. But I also want to switch lanes a little bit here and ask you about any challenges. So would you be able to discuss any challenges that you face when implementing a new technology, and how you overcame that?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I think I'm trying to think of a good example for you.
No problem. I'm sorry to catch you off guard there, if anything.
No, you're totally fine. I think that there are probably some good examples when it comes to rolling out and getting adoption of new technology at companies. And I think that is an aspect that is sometimes overlooked but crucially important. So whether it's been at companies I've worked at where I've been in an operational role, or it's with clients currently, I think one of the challenges isn't in just finding the solution, but like I kind of touched on earlier, bringing people along the journey, training them, rolling it out effectively, continuing to have a process around upskilling and training employees or team members on how to use it. Because at the end of the day, technology is a tool that needs to be used. And if it is not properly used, you're not going to get the benefits out of it that you anticipated. And I think there have been several times where I've had to think very critically about the fact that while, I've used something like an Asana, I'll just use that again, at other companies, when I'm coming in to roll that out at another organization that might not be as tech savvy or might not be as willing to change or adopt new technologies, you again have to figure out the ways to bring people on that journey, meet them where they are, explain the benefits, and also ensure that the kind of processes and standards that you roll out get adhered to so that people, get the benefits that they need. And doing that in a way that's also flexible and doesn't make implementing new technology so rigid either. So hopefully that helps answer the question. But I do think it is critically important, as important as finding the right solution to drive that you believe will drive efficiency or solve a particular pain point, is that rollout, change management, and enablement piece. Because without that, you're going to end up being stuck in the same place you were, if not worse, because now you have people resenting something new that you've introduced. So I think that's critically important for people to consider when they are rolling out new technology for the business.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And also, looking ahead, how do you see technology evolving in the context of business operations, and what should business owners be preparing for or be keeping in mind or being on the lookout for? Anything in particular?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think about a lot right now, especially given the current market environment where you're seeing the funding environment's very different than a couple years ago. You have higher interest rates. The cost of doing things is much more expensive. There's a lot of challenges people are having in small businesses with both hiring and retaining strong specialized talent for their needs. I do think the cost of inaction when it comes to implementing technology or solutions to make your business more efficient and competitive is much higher than it probably was several years ago. And so I really encourage people to think about that. Like, what is the cost of doing nothing? Like, the next couple months, it might be okay. But over the long term, there's someone else who's trying to get better, faster, stronger, and using and experimenting with things like AI, experimenting with things like automation to either improve their customer experience, improve their supply chain, or, drive their marketing automation. And I think if you are not continuously improving or continuously thinking about how you evolve and you just remain in the status quo, you're really going to be left behind in this market more so than maybe previously, where money was cheap, opportunity was there, and it wasn't so competitive.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such great information. Again, similarly, I was having this conversation with my husband to a similar point rather recently. And although I'm not necessarily in your sweet spot with my business, because I'm more like a six-figure business, not a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur yet, but I can definitely attest to how integrating automation has significantly helped me scale my business. And if you just sit on the sidelines and do nothing and continue trying to run a business the same way you did 5 years ago or even further longer ago, it's in my viewpoint gonna potentially push you further back along because technology is just enhancing at lightning speed nowadays, and there's so many different tools out there for even small businesses like myself to help uh, scale and grow and take tasks off of your hands of things that 5-10 years ago we were doing manually, that now can be ran by automation in your business as well. So I think it's great, and there's so much more to learn within it for myself personally. So thank you so much for being on this episode because you've taught me a lot as well. But I wanted to ask you, for listeners, where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. And just to touch on one thing you just said, which that was
Hmm.
spot on, but you don't have to just be a multi-million dollar revenue business to work with me. One of like a couple of my clients are
Hmm.
kind of in that mid six-figure range. So
Hmm.
definitely open to helping entrepreneurs at those stages as well. And I think
Great.
people who are really bought into the benefits of solutions to their operational problems will find the
Hmm.
investment well worth their while. But then to more
Yeah.
specifically answer your question about where to find me, there are a couple places. One is you can visit the website www.highempower.co, and that's where you can learn a little bit more about the business, our offerings, and a little bit more about me. We also put out a weekly newsletter every Thursday morning. It comes out at 11 a.m. Central Time,
Yeah.
and you can subscribe. It's free. You can subscribe there at newsletter.highempower.co/subscribe. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, Jessica Murray, and I'm the founder and owner of Empower. And you can also find us on social. LinkedIn, we have Empower LLC is the profile, and then on Instagram at highempower.co is the handle. So plenty of places to get in touch and learn more. And please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if you're interested in learning more about how we might be able to help your business.
Great. Yeah. And I'll be sure as well to include all of those contact links and information within the show notes. So there'll be no issue or trouble finding her, being able to find Jessica Murray. And also, I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth, because definitely any entrepreneur, small or big, large or mid-size, should be listening to this episode to gather a wealth of knowledge from your expertise. So thank you so much for joining me.
And thank you again for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you. And to our listeners, I hope that you found this episode enlightening as I did. And remember to subscribe to Grit, Grace, and Growth for more insights on industry leaders. And until next time, stay curious and keep growing. Thank you so much.